All right. And welcome to Listen with Mateo. So sit down, grab your coffee. Hell, you'll probably need a shot of tequila because we're going to need to talk about this year so far. It's November 2nd, and somehow we're 10 months into Trump's second term, and it feels like this has been a year of absolute endless months, endless times. And trust me, this year has generally felt like a decade. So tonight we're going to go through the biggest stories of 2025, story by story, because honestly, it's hard to keep track of them anymore. And I'll probably miss some. And if I'll do, I'll catch up on another episode. Because every week there's a new crisis, there's a new executive order, a new person getting indicted or fired or both. And let me be upfront, I'm center left. I think the government should help people, not just corporations. I think immigrants deserve dignity. I think maybe, and this is wild, we shouldn't let 42 million lose SNAP benefits to make a political point. Crazy, I know. But also, as a queer Cuban-American, the immigration policy is making me a little nauseous. So this is going to be 90 minutes because these stories deserves more time. So get comfortable. Pour yourself a strong drink, and let's talk about it. Let's go. All right. We're going to start off with January 20th, the Donald Trump inauguration. And look, whatever you think for of the guy, this is truly historic because Trump became the only second president to serve a non-consecutive term since Grover Cleveland in the 1890s. He is also the first convicted felon to become president. So that's new. We really looked at a guy with 34 convictions and said, yeah, let's put him in charge with the nuclear code. The inauguration got moved indoors because of freezing weather. They printed 220,000 tickets for an outdoor ceremony, but most people couldn't get into the Capitol rotunda, so Trump's crowd was definitely smaller than the past inaugurations, which just absolutely drove him insane. Trump's speech declared that this was the golden age of America and called January 20th Liberation Day. He said he declared a national emergency at the southern border, create something called an external revenue service to collect tariffs, rescind any electric vehicle mandates. But here's the interesting part. After his speech, Trump talked to supporters and admitted that he wanted to discuss pardoning January 6th rioters in his inaugural address, but his team kind of talked him out of it. He called them J6 hostages. They're not hostages. Hostages are held against their will. These people chose to storm the Capitol and assault police officers, but Trump is calling them hostages, which tells you exactly where his head is. Now, let's talk about the money. The Daily Beast ran a piece called Trump's 239 million inauguration was officially the biggest presidential suck up in history. And they weren't wrong. NBC reported corporate America sheltered out millions for Trump's inauguration. Now he's appending millions of their businesses. Trump inaugural committee raised 239 million. To put that in perspective, that's more than double than his first inauguration, which was 107, and nearly 4 times what Biden raised, which was 62 million. And here's the people who donate. Pilgrim's Pride, it's a poultry company, 5 million. A Siegel, largest donor. Ripple Labs is cryptocurrency, $4.9 million. Meta, Zuckerberg, 1 million. Amazon, Bezos, 1 million. OpenAI, Sam Altman, 1 billion. Oil companies lined up: Chevron, ExxonMobil, Shell, ConocoPhillips, all writing checks for at least 500,000 each. About 60% of total $143 million came from donations over $1 million. More than 140 donors gave seven figures. And you know what? Donors got prime seats at the inauguration. Zuckerberg and Benzo sat right there in the Capitol Rotunda during the swearing in. The New York Times noted that some seven figure donors couldn't even get into some events because they were so full, the committee had to refund about $6 million in donations. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. CNBC did a follow up analysis months later, looking into those same companies that donate. And guess what? Many of them are now getting hammered by Trump's tariffs policies. Delta Airlines gave 1 million. Their CEO instantly said Trump would be a breath of fresh air on regulations. But by April, after the tariffs hit, the same CEO called Trump's tariff policy the wrong approach and said it may hurt their booking. The article pointed out America's richest and most powerful companies shelled out millions to fund President Donald Trump's inauguration festivities. 3 months later, some may be asking whether the famously transactional president has their backs. So basically, corporations threw money at Trump, hoping for a favorable treatment. And then Trump did whatever he wanted anyway, which is almost funny, except it shows exactly how the system works. Now, the inaugural committee can accept unlimited donations, no cap, no limit, which is insane. It's literally legalizing bribery dressed up in a tux. These companies aren't donating because they love democracy. They're buying access. They need merger approvals. They need regulations to disappear. They need the government to look the other way while they do profitable but morally questionable things. Trump winning the election, that's democracy. People voted, he won. That's how it works, even when you don't like the result. But corporations throwing $239 million at an inauguration and getting VIP access to power, that's not democracy. That's pay. That's pay to play. That's exactly how corruption works in countries we call corrupt. The thing is, we pretend it's different here because we call them donations instead of bribes. But functionally, it's the same thing. All right. Now, as we move into spring, Trump's immigration crackdown started for real. And I need to talk about this carefully because this isn't just about policy. It's about actual human beings whose lives got destroyed. And the headlines, they tell the story. ICE arrested over 66,000 people in Trump's first 100 days. The administration says 3 out of 4 was criminals, gang members, people convicted of serious crimes. Okay. Deporting dangerous criminals, that makes sense. Most people support that. But here's what happened. In mid May, Stephen Miller, Trump's senior advisor, berated ICE officials and threatened to fire them if they didn't arrest 3,000 migrants per day. Not arrest dangerous criminals, just 3,000 people, a quota. That changes everything. When you give law enforcement a quota, they're not prioritizing actual threats. They're just trying to hit a number. And here's what actually happened. Border Patrol agents got deployed to Chicago, Los Angeles, cities nowhere near the border. They were conducting raids at Home Depot parking lots where day laborers wait for work, at car washes, in neighborhoods. The FBI, which is supposed to investigate federal crimes, got ordered to help ICE with immigration arrests. That's not what the FBI is for. A UCLA study looked at arrests and found 9 out of 10 people arrested were Latino. Community arrests, street arrests, not border apprehensions, surged by 255%. Operations were largely driven by political and demographic targeting rather than just targeting the worst of the worst. That last part is key. They wasn't prioritizing dangerous people. They were meeting quotas by arresting whoever they could find, whoever looked like one of them. According to NPR, at least 20 people died in ICE custody 2025. That's the deadliest year since 2024. Why? Former ICE officials warned that increased detention numbers, decreased oversight, and more street arrests and staffing problems would lead to death, and they were right. When people doing street arrests, instead of taking people from jails, you don't have their medical history. You don't know if they have a chronic condition, if they're on medication, if they have a mental health issue. And ICE detention facilities aren't equipped to handle that. They're not. CNN did major investigative reporting on this. The headline, The New Family Separation Crisis. More than 100 U.S. citizen kids left stranded by ICE enforcement actions. Let that sink in. Over 100 American citizen children, American citizens, separated from their parents because of ICE raids. CNN used GoFundMe campaigns, public records, and interviews to document these cases. Some kids went into foster care. Most ended up with relatives or community members, but many were just left. The article described workers at cannabis farms being arrested, and more than a dozen U.S. children left without parents to care for them after those two rapes. One woman CNN interviewed said her partner was arrested on the way to work. Their kids were at school. Who picks them up? Who pays the rent? Who takes care of them? And then WBEZ Chicago reported on a massive immigration raid on Chicago's apartment building, leave residents reeling. I feel defeat. So here's what happened. Federal agents used a Black Hawk helicopter. They rappelled onto an apartment building at pre-dawn. 37 people arrested. But here's the part that made national news. They detained four U.S. citizen children. Blog Club Chicago's headline, Feds detained 4 children who are U.S. citizens during controversial ICE raid. Neighbors describe seeing kids dragged out in their underwear, some naked, zip ties, separated from parents, put in a U-Haul van. Governor Pritzker issued a statement saying, imagine an armed stranger forcibly removing you from your bed, zip tying your hands, separating you from your family, and detaining you in a dark van for hours. This didn't happen in a country with an authoritarian regime. This happened in Chicago. One neighbor told WBEZ they was terrified. The kids were crying. People were screaming. And I was out there crying when I seen the little girl come around the corner because they were bringing the kids down too and had them zip tied to each other. Cal Matters ran a piece called Can I Just Be a Kid? Students shaken by immigration raids seek help from school counselors. School counselors in Oxnard described kids coming to school terrified their parents would not be there when they get home. The NEA reported the trauma immigration raids leave in classrooms. One kindergarten asks, are they coming to take us away? A kid asked that, a kindergarten. Teachers describe students texting their parents during class to make sure they were okay. Attendance dropped 20% in some Georgia schools after a workplace raid. Kids too scared to go to school. In their case, their parents got arrested while they were gone. CNN told the story of family. Sunday morning in America, a family ripped apart by ICE before a birthday celebration. The parents and eldest son were getting breakfast for the youngest child's birthday. They got pulled over and arrested. The sister was at Dunkin' buying the birthday boy his favorite milkshake. The 22-year-old son told CNN, seeing them handcuffed broke my heart because my mom is a gentlewoman. The kids describe their home as eerily dark and still. Two empty chairs at dinner, their mom's music gone, their dad's loud Facebook videos silent. They were able to visit their parents in detention. One facility let them in, play board games, and have physical contact for 90 minutes. The other gave them 30 behind glass, no touching. And here's what a lot of people don't realize. Many of those arrests worked in agriculture. Farm owners, many Trump supporters started panicking. Crops rotting in the fields. Dairy farms couldn't find milkers. One California farmer told reporters he lost 40% of his workforce. You can't replace that overnight. And this isn't just about farm owners losing money. When crops rot in the field, food prices go up for everyone. And then we have the mental health crisis. The Hill ran an opinion piece. ICE family separations are forcing children to parent themselves. It profiled 21-year-old Beverly Juarez, who suddenly became sole caretaker for three younger siblings after both parents was detained. A mental health organization reported the mental health crisis for children and adults due to ICE. They found that 45% of U.S.-born children of immigrants show trauma indicators when a parent is detained. They're 5 times more than likely to develop clinical depression or anxiety. Kids describe panic dreams and fear that ICE will come to school. The impacts are long-term. Disrupted brain development, behavioral problems, increased risk of chronic illnesses later in life. And then in October, Trump reassigned 12 ICE field agent office directors. Half of the agency's 25 field offices. This was the third major shakeup at ICE since January. The message was clear. Loyalty matters more than experience. If you're not aggressive enough, if you're not, yes, Trump, yes, President Trump, I will do this. Yes, President Trump, I can make this happen. Then you are gone. That's how Trump fucking works. And look, I understand the argument. If they're here illegally, we have the right to enforce immigration law. Sure, countries have borders. Law matters. I'm not arguing for open borders. But what I am saying, when you prioritize quota over actual public safety, you're not protecting anyone. You're just being fucking cruel. And when 20 people die in custody in 1 year, there's something that is seriously wrong. And when you're separating American citizens from their parents, tying kids, dragging them out in their underwear, detaining them for hours, you need to ask yourself, is this really making us safer or just meaner and more cold-hearted? When you're terrorizing communities, when kids are too scared to go to school, when kindergartners are asking, are they coming to take us away? That's not law enforcement. That's a state of terror. My grandparents fled from authoritarianism. I know what it's looked like. I've been told. When government use fear to control people, that's it. This is what it's looks like. This is what it is. And for Jesus fucking Christ, let's start treating people like humans instead of just because they look different, just because they speak different, just because they don't look like you doesn't mean that they're not human beings. Does not mean that they should not be treated as such, because absolutely they should. All right, coming up next, we're going to start the rest of spring, and then we're going to start at the beginning of summer. And man, things get wild. I'm talking tariffs and the death of Pope Francis. So go ahead, press pause, do whatever you need to. Go grab you another strong drink and come on back. All right. April 2nd, Trump called it Liberation Day. The headlines, they told a different story. Trump declared a national emergency over the trade deficit and imposed massive tariffs on basically everything. The average U.S. tariff rate went from 2.5% to 27%, the highest level since the 1920s. Let me repeat this, the 1920s. You know what else happened after the 1920s? Anybody? Anybody? The Great Depression. Trump put 50% tariffs on steel, aluminum, and copper, a 25% tariff on imported cars, new tariffs on pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. By September, tariffs revenue hit 30 billion per month. But who actually paid? Here's what Trump said: China will pay for these tariffs. And here's what actually happened: American consumers and businesses paid for them. That's how tariffs work. When you put a 25% tariff on imported goods, the American company imported them pay the tax, passes the cost to the consumer. The Penn Wharton budget model, a nonpartisan academic institution, ran the numbers. GDP would decrease by 6%. Wages would drop by 5%. Middle income household would lose $22,000 over their life. $22,000. That's a car. That's a down payment on a house. That's a year's worth of groceries. Well, probably not in this climate. And what did we get? Construction spending dropped 2.9%. We lost manufacturing jobs, the opposite of what Trump actually promised. The trade deficit increased by 38%. These tariffs made the problem worse. Now, here's where it gets devastating. The headlines paint a clear picture. Bloomberg reported trade wars rates put U.S. small farms bankruptcy to 5-year. Marketplace farm bankruptcies on the rise as Trump's tariffs lose. CNN, Trump's trade war pushes some U.S. farmers to the brink. Newsweek, farmers are struggling under Donald Trump. And the most heartbreaking one from Yahoo Finance: Arkansas farmers are pleading with the U.S. government to save them. Many face bankruptcy. Numbers are brutal. Bloomberg Law reported family farm bankruptcies increased by 55% last year compared to 2023 and are trending even higher this year. In the first quarter of 2025 alone, bankruptcies filings nearly doubled compared to the same period in 2024. 82 cases in just 3 months. Farm debt hit a record $561.8 billion in 2025, according to the USDA. China used to buy over $12 billion in American soybeans annually. After the tariffs, almost nothing. China slapped 20% tariffs on U.S. soybeans and started buying from South America instead. Soybean prices crashed. Farmers who planted crops expecting to sell to China were stuck with harvests they couldn't sell. Some literally plowed their crops back into the ground because it cost more to harvest and store them than what they were worth. One farmer told CNN, "I voted for Trump because he said he'd help the farmers. Instead, he's destroying it." And then Mexico and Canada, our two biggest dairy export markets, retaliated with tariffs on American cheese and milk powder. Milk prices dropped below the cost of productions. Farmers were losing money on every gallon. A dairy farmer in Wisconsin told reporters he was losing $30,000 a month. He's been farming for 40 years. He said, "I never thought I'd see the day when we have to consider selling the farm." And then China buys 25% of the U.S. pork export. When China imposed retaliatory tariffs, pork prices collapsed. One hog farmer in Iowa said he was losing $25 per pig. When your raising thousands of pigs that add up devastatingly fast. Farm equipment got hit by the steel and aluminum tariffs. A new tractor that cost $200,000 in 2024 now costs $250,000 or more. Farmers need that equipment to operate, but they can't afford it because their products are worth less than the costs, and their costs are high. Yahoo Finance reported on Arkansas farmers gathering in Brooklyn to beg for help. The quotes, they're heartbreaking. Chris King says, Mr. Trump, you looked at me and said, I love you. Mr. Trump, I need to see the fruit of your love. I have never been as worried as I am now about whether or not my kids and grandkids will be able to carry on. Scott Brown says you're going to lose 30% of the farmers in this country if you don't do something. And it's not just here, it's everywhere. Another Arkansas farmer said if there's no emergency funding this year, there will be one out of every 3 farmers who will file bankruptcy. And what did Trump tell farmers? In March, Trump posted on True Social, to the great farmers of the United States, get ready to start making a lot of agricultural product to be sold inside of the United States. Tariffs will go on external product on April 2nd. Have fun. Have fun. That's what he told them. He said, have fun. Newsweek pointed out the cruel irony. Instead of fun, domestic sales, many farmers are struggling to sell their crops inside the U.S. The bailout that didn't happen. CNN reported in October Trump considers massive bailouts of at least $10 billion for American farmers hurt by this trade war. During Trump's first term, farmers got $23 billion in bailout payments, but studies found that bailouts covered about 30% of the farmers' actual losses. And most of the money went to big agricultural corporations and not family farms. Food and Water Watch called it out. Trump's tariffs have hurt farmers before, and they will again. Their analysis, Trump's first trade war led to hundreds of farm bankruptcies, shuttered tens of thousands of small farms. The promised bailout of 2025 still hasn't come through, and it's tied up in the government shut. Wisconsin Public Radio reported farmers called in Trump's trade war wait for bailout, but many call it temporary fix. One farmer told WPR a lot of the farmers that were going to put out of business are the ones that would need to take over because they're the younger, newer farmers, but they don't have as much equity to ride this out. The legal problem, and here's the kicker, farmers courts ruled that Trump tariffs imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act were illegal. Multiple federal courts said that you can't do this. This isn't what emergency powers are for. The tariffs stayed in effect anyway while the cases were appealed. Trump trade advisor Peter Navarro said striking down the tariffs would be the end of the United States. Trump said it could literally destroy the United States. We survived the Civil War, 2 world wars, and Watergate, but overturning illegal tariffs, that's going to destroy America? Look, there are legitimate issues with trade in China. Intellectual property theft, that's real. Currency manipulation, it happens. Some Chinese trade practices are unfair. Absolutely. We should protect key industries for national security. These are real concerns that deserve real solutions. But declaring an emergency to impose tariffs that court says are illegal, that hurt American consumers, that are literally bankrupting American farmers, that made the trade deficit worse. That's not policy. That's incompetence wrapped in nationalism. The people paying the price, working families whose grocery bills went up, farmers who are losing livelihoods, their families built over generations, small businesses that couldn't afford the higher costs. And here's the thing that really gets me. These farmers A lot of them. They voted for Trump. They believed him when he said he'd help them. One Iowa farmer told CNN, I voted for Trump in every election since 2016. I didn't anticipate it being as bad as it is. We don't know what's happening next from day to day. Another told reporters, I had to pin it, I hate to pin it on the American taxpayer, but if they want us to survive, we're going to need some help. Still, I'm not sure Trump is willing to bail out farmers a second time because to the term limited Trump, it doesn't matter. Trump keeps saying America first, but his Taurus put America first. And then in April, Francis passed away at 88. The conclave elected Karl Robert Prevost as Pope Leo X, the first pope from North America. Now, for the LGBTQ plus community, Pope Francis was complicated. He said some slightly more progressive things than previous popes. But the actual church doctrine, it didn't change. He once said, who am I to judge about gay people? Which sounded nice, but the church still considers a relationship sinful. Still, his death marked a major shift for global Catholicism. Whether the new pope will be more or less progressive, we'll see. But also, let's talk about this. The pope died literally the day after meeting JD Vance. Literally the day after meeting JD Vance. The pope died. And here's my thing. The pope met him once and said, all right, fuck it. I'm out. I'm ready. Take me out. I don't want to deal with this bullshit. Take me out. But the Pope was more progressive and he did say a lot of things. And the new Pope has said some more progressively things. So let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. It'll be interesting. But coming up next, we talk about the White House ballroom, the Ukraine war. So stay tuned. Go grab you another drink and let's do this. All right. All right. Now let's talk about something interesting. Something that let's just talk about it. So the summer brought us the White House ballroom controversy. And look, I appreciate architecture and design, but this isn't it. On July 1st, Trump announced he's building a 90,000 square foot ballroom at the White House. For context, that's double the size of the main White House building. It was originally priced at $200 million, but by October it was $300 million. That's $100 million cost overrun in 3 months. The project, it went forward without approval from the National Capital Planning Commission, the federal agency that oversees White House construction. Why no approval? Because the agency is closed due to the government shutdown. So Trump is building without approval from the agency that is supposed to approve it, which can't approve it because the government is shut down. There's some something going on. But Trump said the ballroom wouldn't interfere with the existing building. That was a lie because the entire East Wing is demolished. The entire East Wing, it's gone. The 2 historic magnolia trees planted as memorials for presidents in the 90s cut down in October. It's supposedly private funded. Donors include Caterpillar Inc., Next Extra Energy, Planetary Technologies, F&E Brody, who was convicted of violating U.S. sanctions on Cuba in 2002. That last one particularly bugs me as a Cuban-American. This guy violated sanctions against the regime my family fled from. And now he's funding Trump's party room. They released donor names, but not the amounts. And what does these donors want in return? We don't know. Let's be honest. You're not donating to a ballroom just out of the sanctity, the goodness, the purity of your heart. Let's be honest. And look, I get it. Presidents can modify the White House. That's not wrong. But doing it during a government shutdown while federal workers aren't getting paid and millions are losing food stamps. The optics, man, they're horrible. They're fucking terrible. Trump said officials told him, "Sir, you can do anything you want." No, that's literally not how democracy works. The president can't just do whatever he wants. That's the whole point of a constitutional government. This is pure Marie Antoinette energy. Let them eat cake while building a golden ball. Like, let's be honest. Like, this is horrible. This is horrible. Millions of people currently do not have SNAP benefits. Millions of people are looking at not having health coverage. Millions of people are going to work and not getting paid. But sure, let's build a ballroom. Let's build a $350 ballroom. Let's post pictures on True Social of a newly remodeled bathroom in the White House. Sure, yes, this all makes sense. No, it doesn't. It does not. And then August brought Trump's big meeting with Putin in Alaska, trying to end the Ukraine war. Remember Trump's campaign promise? He would end the war in 24 hours. Within 10 months, and there's still no peace. In February, Trump got U.S. and Russian officials talking in Saudi Arabia. Some basic agreements on restoring embassies and setting up negotiation teams. But in August, Alaska meeting, Putin laid out his demands. Ukraine completely disarmed. Ukraine withdraws from territories Russia claims, including areas Russia doesn't control. Ukraine can never join NATO. Russia keeps everything it occupies. That's not a peace deal. That's Ukraine literally surrender. Trump pushed Zelensky to give up Crimea. Zelensky said no, Ukraine will never recognize the occupation. Trump got frustrated and called Zelensky's position inflammatory on True Social. He also posted Vladimir stop about Russian strikes. Like Putin's going to see that and suddenly end the war. The proposed Budapest summit collapsed in October when Russia rejects Trump's freeze the war idea. Here's the thing. I want the war to end. People are dying. Ukrainian civilians, Ukrainian soldiers, even Russian soldiers who didn't choose this, they're dying. But you can't tell Ukraine to surrender and call it peace. That's not diplomacy. That's appeasement. You are appeasing Putin. If we let Putin keep territory he took through invasion, what message does that send? That if you kill enough people, wait long enough, and then you can have whatever you want. Trump's transactional approach doesn't work here because this isn't a business deal. You can't just split the difference. You can't just let Putin have whatever he wants. And that's what happened. And I think that Trump is starting to realize, because Putin isn't really obtaining to what he said that he would do. So, this is things that we need to end, and we need to do it in a peaceful manner and recognize Ukraine as Ukraine. That's what we need to do. All right. Now, if you thought that up to that point, 2025 was like a circus, it was. But the latter half of 2025, it gets really dark. It gets scary. And we're going to talk about it next. So you may want to pour you a double shot of that tequila this time. So go grab that and come back. All right. Let's let's talk about some things. This is where 2025 for me gets really dark. The next part of this show, the rest of 2025, it gets scared and it scares. On September 10th, Charlie Kirk was assassinated while speaking at a Utah Valley University, shot by a sniper from about 200 yards away. The next day, 22-year-old Tyler James Robinson turned himself in. Prosecutors charged him with murder and announced they would seek the death penalty. The shooter, Robinson, grew up in a conservative Mormon household. His mother told police his political views were changing. He started leaning left, she said, focusing on gays and trans rights seemed to be a factor. His roommate, and some people have said his partner, is a transgender female. And according to court documents, Robinson said this guy spreads too much hate talking about Charlie Kirk. The news dominated everything. Cable network averaged 6.9 million viewers, a 65% jump from the previous week. Trump declared October 14th, which would have been Kirk's 32nd birthday, as a national day of remembrance, calling him a Christian martyr. Kirk's funeral drew 100,000 people. Trump announced plans to award him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Here's the thing. Trump immediately blamed the radical left, saying years of rhetoric comparing people like Kirk to Nazis were directly responsible for the terrorism we're seeing. Vice President J.D. Vance, while guest hosting Kirk's show, which I gotta say is weird timing, said, while our side of the aisle certainly has its crazies, but then went on to say that facts showed that most of the lunatics in American politics today are proud members of the far left. Trump went further on Fox News by saying that most of the violence is on the left. Conspiracy theories exploded about Israelis' involvement, about transgender people, trying to connect it to another shooting by trans person in August. But this is where it gets interesting. The headlines tell a more complicated story. NBC News states right-wing terror attacks plunge in 2025, while left-wing attacks ticked up. Study. The Center for Strategic and International Studies, a bipartisan research group, released a study in late September. And this is what they found. Through July 4th, 2025, there had been 5 left-wing terrorist incidents and only 1 right-wing incident. That's the first time in over 30 years that left-wing attacks outnumbered right-wing attacks. But here's the context that matters. From 2011 through 2024, there was an average of 20 right-wing terror incidents per year, compared to an average nearly 3 left-wing incidents annually. Since 2016, left-wing extremists carried out 41 attacks. Right-wing extremists, 152 attacks. Over the past decade, left-wing violence killed 13 people. Right-wing violence killed 112 people. Jihadist violence killed 82 people. So yes, left-wing violence has increased in 2025. But we're talking about an increase from very low level. And historically, right-wing violence has been far more frequent and far more deadly. CNN ran an analysis. The data doesn't back up Trump's claim that the left is more violent. The Libertarian Cato Institute tracked about 3,600 murders from politically motivated attacks over the past 50 years. And this is what they found. Right-wing ideology accounted for 391 of the 618 non-9/11 political murders. Left-wing ideology accounted for 65. The rest were from other motivations like foreign nationalism or Islamism. Both sides are getting more violent, but we need to be real about this. Political violence, it's increasing overall. The headline from Security Management: political violence is now at its highest level in the United States since the 1970s. In the first half of 2025, there were roughly 150 recorded political motivated attacks, almost doubled from the same period in 2024. And it's coming from all directions. The CSIS study noted that in addition to partisan extremism, anti government extremism has become more pronounced, particularly around immigration issues. On July 4th, a group attacked an ICE detention facility in Texas. Now, this is what's really important: that the vast majority of Americans on both sides oppose political violence. New research found that 85% of Americans say political motivated violence is increased. That includes 86% Republican and 85% of Democrats. Everyone sees that it's getting worse. About half of Americans see left wing extremism, 53%, and right wing extremism, 52%, as a major problem. So, about the same number. The Polarization Research Lab found that only 3% of Americans support partisan violence. The Cato Institute's analysis concluded that less than 2% of Americans believe that political murder is acceptable. A Marquette Law School poll found that 58% of Americans say it's always acceptable to be happy about the death of a public figure they oppose. So we're talking about tiny minorities on both sides who support and commit political violence. The problem is, even the tiniest minority can do tremendous damage. But here's what's creating a dangerous environment: people on both sides think their opponent is way more violent than they actually are. The CSIS report found that while less than 4% of Americans express support for partisan violence, such as assault, arson, or murder, both sides greatly overestimate their opponent's willingness to endorse such actions. Get this: Democrats believe 4.5% of Republicans support partisan numbers. Republicans believe 42% of Democrats do. The reality: less than 4% on either side. University of Mass scholar Sean Westwood told Secretary of Management, but a profound misinterpretation of the other side. But my data show that American estimates nearly a third of their political opponents support partisan murder. This believes that one is facing a vast murderous action rather than a few isolated extremists creates a phantom enemy that makes the country feel far more dangerous than it actually is. And that's what's creating the spiral. Each side thinks the other side is full of violent extremists, when in reality, it's the tiny fringe on both sides. The Chicago Project on Security and Threats found in May 2025 about 40% of Democrats supported the use of force to remove Trump from the presidency. About 25% supported using military to stop protests against Trump. Those numbers far more doubled since fall of 2024. New research found 69% of Americans think the country is so divided that intense political comments and violence are going to escalate. That includes a majority of both Republicans at 63% and Democrats 73%. When everyone expects violence, when everyone thinks the other side is violent, when everyone feels threatened, that creates an environment where the small number of people willing to commit violence feel justified. And this is hard to talk about because it requires holding multiple truths at once. Truth one: Charlie Kirk said things about LGBTQ plus people about people like me that were hurtful, harmful. His rarity contributed to real discrimination and violence against queer people. I didn't like Charlie Kirk. I didn't agree with Charlie Kirk. His thoughts, his views, they caused real harm. Truth number two, political violence is never acceptable. Full stop. Tyler Robinson murdering Charlie Kirk was wrong. It was evil. There's no justification from it. There's none. Political violence, no matter on either side, is not good, is not healthy, is not where it should be, it's not where it needs to be. It's not healthy for our nation. So stop both. What happened to being able to debate, to be able to talk, to be able to come together, to be able to, we need to realize that everybody is a fucking human being. Everybody. I didn't like Charlie Kirk. I wasn't sad whenever Charlie Kirk died. I was not. But I didn't celebrate it. I felt bad. I was heartbroken for his wife who just lost her husband and for his kids who just lost their father. I feel heartbroken for those people, but not for Charlie Kirk, because Charlie Kirk said hateful things about people like me. But it still should not have happened. Political violence is never accepted. Point blank, period. Truth number three, Trump and his allies immediately weaponized this tragedy. They used Kirk's death to attack the entire left, to silence critics, to push more authoritarian policies. Truth four, political violence is coming from both sides, and it is increasing. But it's coming from the tiny minority of both sides, not from mainstream Democrats or mainstream Republicans. It's the most extremist minority. It's not everyone else. The truth number five, the vast majority of Americans, left and right, oppose political violence. We have way more in common than we think. Political violence is wrong. Whether it's Charlie Kirk's assassination, the attempted assassination of Trump in 2024, the attack on Paul Pelosi, the shooting of Steve Scalise and other Minnesota legislators, the ICE facility attack in Texas, any other violence motivated by politics. We can condemn all political violence from all sides while also recognizing that it's coming from extremist minorities, not mainstream movements. Historically, right-wing violence has been more frequent and deadly. Left-wing violence has increased in 2025. We're all contributing to a heated environment that makes violence more likely. The CSIS report put it plain and simple. Leaders across the political spectrum must condemn violence extremists of all kinds, denying it legitimately and reducing its appeal. This means Trump needs to condemn right-wing violence, including January 6th, which he won't do. And progressives need to condemn left-wing violence without equivocation. But using Kurt's death to demonize the entire left, to criminalize protest, to silence dissent, that's not fighting extremism. That's exploiting a tragedy for a political gain. Charlie Kirk didn't deserve to die. His family deserves to grieve without their loss being weaponized. And we all need to lower the temperature before more people get hurt. Because the data is clear. Most of us on both sides don't want this. We're being held hostage by tiny extremist minorities while politicians use the violence to grab more power. We're better than this. We have to. The Charlie Kirk assassination led directly to one of the scariest attacks on free speech in modern American history. On September 17th, from September 17th to September 22nd, ABC suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live after he commented on Trump supporters' reaction to Kurt's assassination. Kimmel said that the MAGA gang was trying to characterize the suspect as anything other than one of them, and that Trump loyalists were doing everything they can to score political points. For that, they suspected him. But also, it wasn't that, but also, let's be honest, in the video, so Jimmy Kimmel says this, and then Jimmy Kimmel shares a video of a reporter asking Donald Trump, how does he feel after the death of the guy who got him elected for his second term? Who, how do you feel about it? And honestly, Trump just looks back and says, I feel good, and then starts talking about the ballroom. That's what Kimmel was saying. That's what Kimmel was making fun. Kimmel was not making fun of Charlie Kirk and the death of Charlie Kirk. That's not what he was doing. And then came the FCC chairman, Brandon Carr, publicly pressured ABC to punish Kimmel, threatened to revoke broadcast rights. Two major station owners, Nexstar and Sinclair, said they preempted Kimmel's show, and both were seeking mergers requiring the administration approval. Trump celebrated, saying, congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. The FCC chairman threatened to revoke licenses because he didn't like a comedian's joke, because Trump celebrated censorship and called for more. The FCC chairman, Brandon Carr, said, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Two people who I never thought in my life that I would agree with. Two, Ted Cruz and Paul. Both said this was dangerous for the Republican Party. And they're 100% right. Because both sides want to do this measuring. Oh, you did this to us, so we're going to take it further. Then we're going to take it further. Then we're going to take it further. Then we're going to take it further. This should never have happened. Then on September 3rd, Kimmel returned. This show is not important. What's important is that we live in a country that allows us to have shows like that. And hours before it happened, Trump posted another thread again, ABC. Trump has been involved in 34 media lawsuits since 2015, compared to 7 in the 3 decades before. In September, he filed a $15 billion lawsuit against the New York Times. ABC's parent company, Disney, paid $16 million to settle Trump's suit. Paramount paid $6 million. YouTube paid $24.5 million. Legal experts said these were winnable cases, but companies settled because they needed government approval for business. The White House banned the Associated Press from events. But wait, there's more. In October, things got even crazier with the Pentagon. The headlines, they tell the story. NBC News reported 5 major broadcast networks say they will not sign Pentagon's new press policy. ABC News stated, after others departed, Pentagon announces new press corps filled with conservative news outlets. Democracy Now! Walkout. Top U.S. media, including conservative outlets, reject new Pentagon press restrictions. And here's what happened. Defense Secretary Peter Hegseth, who used to work for Fox News, announced a new press policy. The policy said reporters could have their press passes revoked if they published information the Pentagon hasn't authorized for release, even unclassified information. The Pentagon wanted to control what reporters could publish. That's scary. Access reported news outlets broadly reject Pentagon's new press rules. The Pentagon Press Association called the policy something designed to stifle a free press and potentially expose us to prosecution for simply doing our job. So what did journalists do? They walked out on October 15th. A dozen of reporters from the New York Times, the Associated Press, CNN, the Washington Post, Reuters, the Guardian, the Wall Street Journal, all of them turned in their Pentagon Press credentials and left. And it wasn't just liberal media. Fox News walked out, Newsmax walked out. These are conservative outlets, and even they said, nah, this is too much. The only outlet that agreed to sign, One American News Network. That's it, one. So a week later, on October 22nd, the Pentagon announced its new generation press corps. And guess who's in it? The Gateway Pundit, the National Pulse, Human Events, podcaster Tim Pool, Just the News, founded by John Solomon, Frontlines by Turning Point USA, Lindell TV run by Mike Lindell, the coked out My Pillow guy. Yeah, him. And I'm not making this up. The My Pillow guy now has a Pentagon press credential. Guest spokesman Sean Parnell celebrated on X, saying these outlets represent a fresh relationship after the self-righteous media who chose to self-deport from the Pentagon. The Gateway Pundit's correspondent, Jordan Conradson, posted he was excited to help restore honest journalism after agreeing to follow basic rules, something that legacy media refuses to do. And Mike Lindell posted that Lindell TV was proud to partner with a new generation of news organizations, reshaping how real information reaches the public. And what this actually means, the Washington Post captured it. The Pentagon introduces new right-wing media press corps after media walkout. Let's be clear. After what happened here, the Pentagon kicked out credentialed journalists from actual news organizations, including conservative ones like Fox and Newsmax, and replaced them with a far-right outlets and podcasters who agreed to only report what the Pentagon authorizes. This isn't about restoring honest journalism. This is about replacing independent journalism with state propaganda. Robert Starr, who covered the Pentagon for CNN for years, said reporters will have to work harder. There's no question about it. This is a disservice to American military families. And here's the kicker. Even some of the new outlets started posting job listings because they didn't actually have a Pentagon correspondent. Just the News posted a help wanted ad for the Pentagon correspondent after they got approved for access. So we went from having experienced military reporters who covered the Pentagon for decades, people who are literally learning on the job and have agreed to only report what they're being told they can't report. Using government regulatory power to punish media companies for criticism is unconstitutional. This is exactly how authoritarianism works. And as a performer, this terrifies. If they can threaten to shut down TV networks for criticism, they can shut down theaters, clubs, anywhere where people can speak free. Floyd Abrams, one of America's top First Amendment lawyers, called Trump's Times lawsuit ridiculous. As a matter of fact, as a matter of law, but extraordinarily dangerous as a matter of national policy. If you're cheering for this because it hurts Trump critics, ask yourself, would you be okay with a Democratic president doing this to Fox News? Once this precedent exists, it doesn't just goes away. It doesn't. It does not just go away. All right. And then also in September, God, September was a very busy month. Trump did two things that should alarm everyone. On September 22nd, signed an order designating Antifa as a domestic terror organization. In October, he floated making it a foreign terrorist organization. And here's the problem. Antifa is not an organization. It's an ideology. It stands for anti-fascist. People who are opposed to fascism and far-right extremism. There's no leader. There's no membership. There's no structure. Former FBI Director Christopher Wray testified to Congress that Antifa is an ideology, not a group. So there's no legal authority to designate domestic terrorist groups The executive order cites no law because there isn't one. If Trump designates Antifa as a foreign terrorism group, it becomes illegal to provide material support. But what does that mean when it's not an organization? Who decides what counts as or who counts as Antifa? If you're protesting against white supremacists, are you Antifa? A former Justice Department Terrorism Counsel said it would effectively criminalize activity associated with a diffuse ideology. That's thought crime. That's 1984. And then Trump started using the DOJ by going after his enemies. On September 25th, James Comey indicted for making false statements to Congress. New York Attorney General Letitia James subpoenaed by a federal grand jury. Senator Adam Schiff under investigation for alleged mortgage fraud. John Bolton indicted for handling classified documents. Before these indictments, Trump posted on Truth Social calling them guilty as hell and demanding justice must be served now. Ed Martin, who failed Senate confirmation as U.S. Attorney, now leads a weaponization working group targeting Trump's perceived enemies. NPR identified over 100 perceived enemies the administration has targeted. Democratic Representative Robert Garcia got a letter from the DOJ after criticizing Elon Musk on CNN. He said it was 100% to silence me, but also to send a message that if you dare to stand up to Elon Musk, the DOJ will be weaponized against. Here's the thing. Trump was prosecuted. He was indicted 4 times. He said the justice system was weaponized against him. Many people agreed. So here's my question. If you thought that it was wrong when it happened to Trump, how can you support when it's happening to his enemies? The principle has to be consistent. The DOJ should prosecute crimes, not political enemies. And when the president publicly declares people guilty before they're charged, that's not justice. That's revenge. And this is how democracy dies. When the justice system becomes a weapon for whoever holds the power. And then on October 1st, the federal government shut down because Congress couldn't pass a budget. We're now over a month in with no end in sight. Let's look at it by the numbers. 900,000 federal workers furloughed, sent home without pay. There's another 2 million workers without paycheck. Air traffic controllers, TSA agents, Border Patrol. Nearly 80% of air traffic controllers in New York have called out sick. Flights delayed are becoming common. The FAA is warning about travel crisis with Thanksgiving approaching. But the worst impact, the worst, SNAP benefits stopped November 1st. 42 million Americans lost their food assistance. As children, elderly people, disabled people, working families who don't make enough to cover food. Federal judges ordered Trump to use contingency funds. He refused, citing legal uncertainty about his authority. Food banks are overwhelmed. Federal workers who've missed paychecks are now standing in line for food themselves. Workers are working their job that they're not getting paid for. Then after that, going out and driving for things like Uber, DoorDash, Lyft, just to provide for their family. And here's how it all went down. The Republicans passed a bill in the House. They say Democrats in the Senate are blocking it. Democrats point to Republican demands for massive spending costs through recessions, permanently cutting already appropriated funds, and both sides are dug in, but claim the moral high ground, and people are starving. Meanwhile, Trump has been golfing in Florida, hosting galas at Mar-a-Lago, and traveling internationally while all of this is going on. The House hasn't voted since September 19th. They've been on vacation the entire month of October. Here's the thing, okay? I don't care about the political blame game right now. What I do care about is that 42 million people are right now going without food. That's not a political talking point. That's human beings going hungry. You want to fight about spending cuts? Fine. But don't do it by starving people. Pass a clean bill to reopen the government, then have your budget fight. But they won't, because hurting people serves their political purpose. And this is both sides. This isn't one side. This isn't just the Democrats. Before I get Republicans commenting, yes, I agree. No, this is your side fucking too. Let's be honest. Let's be honest, because here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay, because the funds that you Republicans want to cut is health insurance subsidy for the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. In which I get it. The ACA, it's not perfect at all. It needs help. It needs working. I'll admit that with you. I do. But here's the thing. You want to talk about cutting those funds? What happens when you do cut those funds? Those insurance prices, they don't go down. They don't go down. So now you are putting millions of people, millions of U.S. citizens, millions of working U.S. citizens who otherwise can't have health insurance are now going without health insurance. So before you claim the moral high ground over here, let's talk about that. Let's talk about you willing to let millions of people go without health insurance, affordable health insurance that people need. Well, let's talk about this is not governed by either side. This is not. They say that a marriage works best when it's 50. When you give a little, you take a little. You give a little, you take a little. You give a little, you take a little. And goddamn it, our fucking government needs to be run the same exact way. There's a reason. There's a reason for that. Donald Trump, you are not just the president of the Republican Party. You are also the president of the Democratic Party. It's time you start fucking recognizing that and start using your platform as a way to disarm Democrats because they don't think the way you do. They don't like you, so I must hurt them. I must let them starve. Stop. Stop. All right, coming up next, I will wrap it all up with what it all means, where I stand, and I'm about to get honest with y'all. Stay tuned. All right, so we've talked about 10 months of chaos. Now let's talk about what it means. Every major story this year has involved Trump pushing past constitutional limits. Record corporate money buying inauguration access. Illegal tariffs bankrupting farmers and hurting consumers. Immigration enforcements with quotas, death in custody, and American kids separated from their parents. A tragedy weaponized for political control. Government power used to silence media. Ideologies criminalized. The DOJ targeting enemies. And a shutdown starving millions while Trump golfs. Each story alone is bad, but together, it's a pattern of authoritarianism. And this is how it starts. But here's what nobody else is talking about. Where the hell are we at, Democrats? Seriously. What is your plan? What's your message? What are you actually doing? Trump is out here doing whatever he wants, breaking every norm, ignoring courts, and Democrats are what? Sending strong worded letters? Issuing press releases? Having committee meetings? They lost in 2024, and not just because Trump is effective at messaging, but because Democrats have no clear message, no vision, no plan that resonates with regular people. Working families are struggling with high prices. Farmers are going bankrupt. Kids are being separated from parents. And what's the Democratic message? We need to preserve our norms and institutions. That doesn't pay grocery bills. We're fighting for democracy. Cool. But can you also fight for lowering food prices? Trump is a threat to our values. Yes. And what are you offering besides we're not Trump? They're lost. The Democrats are directionless. They're reactive instead of proactive. They're fighting yesterday battles while Trump defines tomorrow. When farmers are losing their livelihoods, Democrats talk about climate change, which is important. But if you can't also speak to the immediate crisis farmers face, you're losing those farmers. When working people are worried about meeting ends meets, Democrats talk about student loan forgiveness, which is important. But for some people, but what about the millions who didn't go to college and who are also struggling? When communities are being terrorized by ICE raids, Democrats say we support comprehensive immigration reform. Cool. But what does that mean right now for the parent for those parents whose parents are just arrested? And oh my God, the internal fighting. Democrats are too busy arguing about who's progressive enough, who's moderate enough, who authentic enough to actually unite around solutions. Their language policing each other while Trump is literally changing the country. They're having secular firing squads on Twitter while Republicans are taking over states' legislatures, courts, and school boards. If Democrats want to be relevant again, here's what we need to do. We need to send a clear economic message. Talk about working people, about their actual life, prices, wages, jobs, healthcare costs, not abstract policy papers, real solutions that people can understand. Stop the internal fighting. Unity doesn't mean everyone agrees on everything. It means agreeing on core priorities and fighting for them together instead of fighting each other. Meet people where they are. Stop lecturing. Stop assuming people should just get it. Explain things clearly. Show up in communities you've ignored. Listen more than you talk. Have an actual vision. Being anti-Trump isn't a vision. What are you for? What's your plans for making lives better? Give people something to vote for, not just against. Fight like it matters. Republicans are playing for keeps. They're changing laws, packing courts, rewriting rules. Democrats need to match that energy or accept they're going to lose. And I say this as somebody who aligns with progressive values. Democrats are failing. They're failing to inspire. They're failing to organize. They're failing to present a compelling alternative. And the longer they stay directionless, the more damage Trump can do. So what do regular people do? Stay engaged. Don't check out. That's what they want. Defend each other. When they come for immigrants, we stand together. When they attack the media, we defend free speech. When they target any group, we fight back. Demand better from Democrats. Being the lesser evil isn't good enough anymore. We need actual vision, actual leadership. Call your representatives. Tell them to get their act together and get their goddamn ass out there. Remember basic principles: democracy, human rights, rule of laws. These matter regardless of who's in power. Keep perspective. This is bad, but we survived bad before. America have overcome worse, and we can do it again. This year has been really exhausting, and I'm tired. You're tired. We're all tired. But exhaustion is a political tool. They want us too tired to fight back. So here's what I'm asking. Don't let them wear you down. Don't normalize this. Don't accept this as this is just how things are now. This isn't normal. None of this is normal. Farmers going bankrupt because of illegal tariffs. Not normal. Kids being zip tied and separated from parents. Not normal. A president threatening to revoke broadcast licensing because he doesn't like jokes. Not normal. The DOJ targeting political enemies. That's not normal. 42 million people losing food assistance during a shutdown is not normal. And we don't have to accept it. But also, we can't just wait for Democrats to save us. They're too busy having a freaking identity crisis. We have to save ourselves. We have to organize. We have to show up. We have to demand better from everyone, Republicans and Democrats. But right now, both parties are failing us. Republicans are embracing authoritarianism. Democrats are embracing what? Strong-worded statements. We deserve better. We demand better. And God damn it, we can do better. And that's it for 2025. 10 months of chaos, congressional chaos, constitutional violations, and the Democrats has no idea what they're doing yet. And I know that was a lot. I know it was heavy. I know some of you disagree with things I've said, especially that last part about Democrats. Good. Because we should disagree. That's healthy. That's democracy. But we can't disagree about basic facts, about what's happening, about whether it's acceptable. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Have these conversations. Don't let people forget what's happening. Don't let them normalize it. But most importantly, don't give up. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together, but only if we actually fight. This has been Listened with Mateo. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, whatever brings you back. And I'll see you guys next week. We out.